to my video on a technical model. A technical model is the perfect way in which a skill should be performed in terms of what it should look like and using the correct technique. It's used to analyse performance by comparing it to performance of a certain skill, as the technical model will show how the skill is meant to be performed. So therefore, if that performer isn't doing something correct, it should be easy to spot to then be able to change it to then further improve their performance of that skill. This method produces qualitative data as opposed to most methods which produce quantitative data, which is numerical, so things such as statistics. This means a technical model provides the performer with more than just numbers, for example, their outcomes, but actually it gives them actual advice on how to improve their techniques. And then, so there is more than one way that the information for a technical model can be gathered. One way is through literature, such as a manual for the specific sport, or you could observe an elite player. There may also be an objective way of completing a skill, meaning it's a clear set out way that everyone uses for that skill. Or it could be a subjective interpretation, meaning that the coach teaching you the skill has their own way of completing it in which they feel is the best possible way to gain the best possible outcome. This is then used to compare against the performer's actual performance to then analyse them. So finally, in a technical model, there are 3 stages of performance: the preparation, the execution, and the recovery. For each of these stages, the coach will have coaching points to give in order for the performance of the skill to be of a high standard. For example, a chest pass in netball. The preparation stage would involve holding the ball to your chest with your hands in a W shape on the ball and elbows tucked in. The execution stage would involve stepping forwards, and transferring your weight onto your front foot and then extending your arms, wrists and fingers. The recovery stage would be releasing the ball and moving back in the space, being ready for more gameplay. So now we'll look at the method. Usually a coach will watch a performer in training or possibly a game and will tell them afterwards, after a skill was complete, what was done well and what was not compared to the technical model. However, in order to gather the data and use it effectively, usually a performer is filmed when carrying out the specific skill. They're filmed, then you have the footage to keep referring back to, so you don't forget anything that needs improving or even miss anything. Then you can further improve the performance, and it should therefore be a more effective method of technical analysis. You can then also use the clip in certain types of software such as SlowPro or Coach's Eye. These softwares allow you to slow down the video or even annotate and mark out certain areas to be able to show as clearly as possible what the performer did well compared to the technical model. There's also another software called Dartfish, which is the most expensive form of software, but also therefore the most effective piece for this type of analysis. When filming for technical analysis, it's important that the camera or cameras are set up in the correct place to get a clear view of the skill in order to be able to effectively analyse it. If you can't see a certain part of the skill in the recording, then there's no way it can be compared to the technical model. So the analysis would be incomplete and therefore ineffective. So the skill we've chosen to analyse is the box out and rebound in basketball. So I'm now going to explain the perfect model. This skill is used during a gameplay to stop the opposition from running in to receive the rebound in order to give your team back possession of the ball, and in turn giving your team more of an opportunity to score. So it's a defensive skill which involves multiple different stages in order to be completed well and have the desired effect. So the preparation stage involves them being in front of the player they're marking, but also ensuring they have their eyes on the ball as well as their player, so they know where they will need to be. They should be stood in a fairly low stance with their feet wide apart, and if necessary have their hand or forearm across the player's chest. The execution stage starts when the ball is shot at the basket. The player puts their forearm across the player's chest if it's not already there, pivots round to face the basket, ensuring contact is kept so they know where the player is at all times. Their stance should still be low and wide, as this makes it a lot harder for the attacking player to try and break around them to receive the ball from the rebound. The recovery stage is then once the ball's hit the rebound, they sprint forwards and jump up using a 2-footed jump to receive the ball whilst it's still in the air. They then hold the ball to their side with their quad behind it so that if anyone tries to hit it out, it should just bounce off their leg. When they turn around to get the ball back into play, they should not turn into their player, as this makes it easier for them to try and grab the ball from them. So now I'm going to compare that perfect model to my player who I analysed. The preparation stage was not done very well in this case. He started facing out the whole time and wasn't facing his player to begin with, which is the main part of the stage, to not have your back to the player you're marking. He seemed to be quite overly focused on the ball and where it was going, not the player. However, he did start with his arm across his chest, so he did at least have the contact. So if he couldn't see him, he could feel where he was. His stance could have possibly been slightly lower, but not a lot. Overall, he stayed quite low and wide, so that's good. The execution stage was much better. Once the ball was thrown, he straight away turned around, completely spot the player, wide, low stance, watching where the ball was going the whole time. Possibly could have stayed a bit closer to the player and kept contact for longer, but other than that, it was performed pretty well. Finally, the recovery stage, he did sprint forwards with a lot of power, but he stayed low to the ground and wait for the ball to fall into his hands rather than taking a two-footed jump up to receive the ball straight away. What he did well also was that once he did receive the ball, he moved into a more open space to be further away from the player who would now be marking him, and turned around with the ball tucked into his side to make it harder for another player to knock it out of his hands. Okay, so now we're just going to evaluate the method of technical analysis. One advantage of this method is that it's broken down into different stages, which makes it easier to understand, so therefore easier to make improvements. It may also, in this sense, be good for beginners, as it's in clear steps, so they should be able to make sense of it, so it doesn't feel overly confusing. Another positive is that it is filmed, so therefore it can be rewatched multiple times. It doesn't rely on the coach physically remembering the performance, as it's there to be seen. It can also really help players to see themselves, as they may feel they're doing something right, but by physically seeing it, they may realise what actually needs improving, so therefore they make the improvements and improve their performance. If the software is chosen to be used, this can be a positive, as it means you can manipulate the film by annotating it or slowing it down to break down the performance further, to really be able to explain and show the performer exactly what needs doing. Something's made clear and simple, this means it's easier to understand and therefore should make the performer feel like the skill is also easier and simpler to do than maybe they first felt. The data produced is also qualitative, which is positive. It does not provide outcomes, it provides why the outcome was what it was. So the performer has an understanding of what's going wrong rather than just being shown what went wrong. However, a disadvantage is that in order to use this technique, you need quite a good level of technical knowledge to be able to break down the skill, but also explain it and know the technique. So you are teaching the correct technique of the skill, and so their performance is actually improved. Some of the better software, such as Dartfish, is very expensive to purchase, so therefore may not be available to everyone, meaning the use of the method may not be as effective for the performer if they don't have the software. You also have to ensure you're filming. When you are filming, the cameras are in the right place, or you have more than one camera to capture all the angles. What is not only more expense, but also if you can't do this, then the capturing of the data may therefore be poor, and the analysis of it will therefore also be poor and won't assist the performer in the way it's supposed to. And finally, the last disadvantage is that if people can't afford the digital equipment or software, then this method is very hard to do live, as you have to try and commit to memory exactly where and what went wrong in the technique. But you also then can't show them where it went wrong, only tell them, which means the performer loses out as they don't see it themselves. And if it turns this way, it makes it harder for them to change their technique. They can't see exactly what's going wrong.